Why, hello there. Well, this is the first episode of the Game Zone. Currently, I am recording on my podcast on my phone using Podbean, as well as I am recording for my YouTube channel. So you can either listen to this audio or you can watch me on YouTube talking about this. This is my first Game Zone episode. I've done ones for wrestling, and I've done ones for my superhero stuff. Which, ironically, I'm going to do one for Superhero Showdown, the first podcast episode. So it's going to be Season 3 on that. So this is Season 1, Episode 1. I am Chucky, and we got some interesting topics to talk about. We're going to talk about the Game Man Awards. What some of the best games were the year compared to a lot of people. We're also going to talk about gaming memories, game channels that I like, RPG series I would like to play but I have not been able to play yet. We'll also talk about underappreciated action RPGs in my mind. This gaming generation versus the 90s. We're also going to talk about Christmas gifts in the past. So to start it off, I started gaming in I was born in 85, about 87, we had an Atari 2600, and I remember, when I was my earliest gaming memory is playing Atari with the family, but as I got older, my aunt lived up the road, and they had an NES. My sister had a friend, her name was Trish, and she also had an NES, and the first game I ever played was Zelda, and then I saw Mario, and I really got into it, and later in the years I got Nintendo, Game Boy, Super Nintendo, Genesis. Played N64 at the mall. I've always been, as long as I can remember, video games have always been a really integral part of my life. I love games. I play video games nearly every day, whether it's on my phone. I actually have 2 TVs set up. I got a really big TV over here. Got a baby TV over here. I got switchers. I have consoles everywhere. I live in a small room, but my closet is full of video games. So let's first talk about the Game Awards. Well, first, Xbox gave an award to their best-selling game of the year, which is actually Cuphead. I have Cuphead digitally on my Xbox One. I don't have an Xbox One, I actually have an Xbox One. I think it's good, and it's difficult, but it's not like, fuck, this is so hard, I don't want to fucking play this, because there are some games like that, like Dark Souls. But Cuphead has very good game mechanics. I love the animation, the music, the overworld map, and I actually like it. It's not as hard as everybody says it is, but Cuphead to me is a very, very good game. I love it. I haven't been able to beat one of the levels yet, but bouncing back between the levels, you got this much further, you got this much further. There's a gauge that shows you how far you actually got in the game. So to me, that's actually pretty good. I really like it. I think it's a great game. Also, that the Video Game Awards, the game of the year is Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, I actually put a review up on my channel, which is Chucky's Funhouse, and I like the game. There's things wrong with the game. Is it game of the year? It's a pretty good game. I wouldn't say game of the year, but I thought it was a pretty good game. I thought it was a pretty solid game. My biggest complaint is the breaking of weapons. Constant breaking of weapons. And I always think that's just a little stupid. Your weapons breaking all the time. It kind of eliminates a lot of shit that's going on. But that was Game of the Year. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people also liked Mario Odyssey. It's weird that some of the games that were garnered as big releases just kind of faded away. Destiny 2 was supposed to be a big release. Injustice 2 was supposed to be another big hit. Resident Evil 7 is another one. So it's kind of hard when you have these games that were supposed to be big hits and it was a clunker. I'm really not sure, in my opinion, what the game of the year is, because I've been playing a lot of retro games this year and a lot of RPGs or stuff on my phone, and really rekindling with old game franchises. So let's talk about some gaming memories. So a couple gaming memories that I always love to share. One of them is when I first got with my fiance that I have now. One of a big gaming memory that we have is we sat down. She came over. We played Diablo 3. She had a bad experience with Diablo 3 with someone she was with before, and me and her sat down together and played it on the Xbox 360. We played it for 8 hours, went to bed, got up, played it for I think another 10 to 12 hours, and beat the game. It was awesome. It was a really good memory. It's one I really cherish, and we still play Diablo 3. Not as much as we used to, but we still play it. Another gaming memory for me would be all the wrestling games I've played over the years and the time I just put into these games. I could spend 6-7 hours creating a character, which is interesting because not a lot of people would spend that much time just on the character creation, because I want it to be something special, unique, interesting, not just a carbon copy recreation of existing wrestlers. But I also remember when I got one of the big gaming memories is I went to a friend's house. Well, not really a friend's house. My parents always tried me to be friends with kids, and to be honest, I really didn't get along with kids when I was little. So we went over, and they had a Super Nintendo. Now, we didn't have money for like EGM or any of that stuff, so my exposure to games is either people I knew at school talking about games, or going to video stores and seeing them, or Toys R Us, or whatever you may be. Well, we went over, and this kid had like a Super Nintendo with every Super Nintendo game that you could think of, but he didn't care about it because he was a rich kid, so he really didn't care about the Super Nintendo too much. So I was playing the Super Nintendo and trying out these games, and I remember how awesome the graphics were and how in tune I was with these games. And one of the games I was playing was A Link to the Past. I played Castlevania, I played Metroid, I played Bubsy, which was better than when I was a kid than now. I really enjoyed the games, and I really fell in love with the Super Nintendo. So much so, I convinced my parents to rent one, and back then you didn't need a credit card to rent a video game system. And we just never brought it back. And I remember that. We never brought it back. And then I ended up, because of that, I got a Super Nintendo, which was really good. I got a Super Nintendo, and I love that Super Nintendo. Great games, except for like Batman Forever. Another gaming memory is my parents always had, I don't know why this happened. For Christmas one year, we got a bunch of games for Christmas, because at that point, everybody was on like the PlayStation, the Super Nintendo, all this stuff. And I somehow was able to get almost every LJN game for the Nintendo for Christmas. But I also got like Blaster Master, I got Zelda, and I got Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. But I got Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future, Jaws, among all this other shitstorm of games. And I remember they pissed me off then as much as they piss me off now. By the way, I'm drinking, this is a Mango Loco Monster Juice. It doesn't taste like an energy drink. It tastes like juice. It's actually pretty good. So, I also remember Super Mario Bros. 3. I was like in 5th or 6th grade, and I was hell-bent on beating Mario 3. No password system, no memory cards back in those days. So what happened was, I stayed up until 4 in the morning playing it. Then, I didn't want my NES to, I didn't want it to shut off or anything, and I didn't want to, like, start from scratch because I was at the final world. I left it on all day, and then I came home, and I was able to beat Mario 3, and then my NES overheated. So what I did is, my NES was fried. So I unhooked it, put it in my sister's room, and took hers. Because my oldest sister, like, she never played Nintendo. She played, like, Tetris. So she really didn't care. So let's talk about, I have more gaming memories, but over these episodes, I'll share some more, and I got some Christmas ones I'm going to talk about too. Game channels. Now, I've mentioned before, like on my YouTube channel, about the fact that The Great Clement got me really going on watching video game channels, which I didn't even know existed. I was late to the YouTube party. I didn't start watching YouTube until like 2012. So, the cat just fucking bit me too. That fucking sucked. But some of the game channels I really, really like is, of course, Cinemassacre for AVGN, James and Mike Mondays. They also have a bunch of Let's Play series on there. Pat the NES Punk for the Completely Unnecessary Podcast, which the Completely Unnecessary Podcast, if you want to listen to it, is also on Podbean as well. GameSack, because they compare video games, and it's actually really cool to see what they think of that. There's ACG Gaming, which he gives not 5-minute reviews, but like 20-minute reviews on video games. But one that I really, really like I go back and forth on the Game Chasers, because I've seen a lot of the episodes, but it's the Happy Console Gamer, Johnny Millennium. Johnny Millennium, to me, is like so informative, and it's because of him why I've been so intrigued of certain video game franchises. Because of him, I went and bought Guardian Heroes. Because of him, I've become interested in Ys, Phantasy Star. I wish I could play Phantasy Star Online, but that is gone. He's really got me into just a lot of, like, the nostalgia. You could just talk about nostalgia about games, and where you came up as a gamer, and how you really interact as a person. So to me, like, the Happy Console Gamer and Robman are like, I love watching those videos because you learn something even if you've seen the video before. You catch something you haven't seen, and he seems like a cool dude. A really cool dude. Hopefully one day I can meet him at a convention or something, but I really think the Happy Console Gamer is really, really cool. And those are some of the game channels I really like, so check them out. They got more subscribers than I got, so I'm pretty sure that most of you have already seen their stuff. Now, next I want to talk about RPGs I want to play. These are RPGs I have never played, but I really want to play. One of those on the list is Chrono Trigger. Like, I think I played it for about maybe 10 minutes, but I haven't really sat down and played Chrono Trigger. And Chrono Trigger is considered one of the best RPGs on the Super Nintendo. And it's a game I really want to play, and I just hope that, like, one day I'll just be able to sit down and play it. I got a reproduction cart that I got, but I can't save anything on it, so it doesn't work, which sucks. Phantasy Star is another one. Now, I've played the action RPG Phantasy Star, but the only thing I have for Phantasy Star is I have the Sega collection on the 360, which is Phantasy Star. I believe it has 1, 2, and 3 on there, and I think 4. But I really want to divulge into Phantasy Star and see exactly what that series is all about. And I would really love to just explore, go into there, and really just divulge into everything that is Phantasy Star. Another one is I would really like to get into the Ys series. Now, I actually have Ys 3, and I've played it, but I don't quite understand what I'm supposed to be doing, because I die really fucking easy. But I've never really stepped foot into the series. But I was talking about the Happy Console Gamer a minute ago. Well, he was talking about it. Like, it is very, like, it's Zelda-esque, which I love The Legend of Zelda. That is just really good gaming. And I just really want that experience to sit down, play Ys, and really go through it. Another one is Final Fantasy III. I have never played Final Fantasy III, and I like some of the Final Fantasy games. I don't like 12 or 13, and the newest one was crap in my eyes. Secret of Mana is another series I want to try. I've wanted to try Earthbound, but I've never played it, and I'm not spending $200 for a game that I might like and I might not like. So let's talk about underappreciated action RPGs. Now, action RPGs is a role-playing game where you go around and you can attack like AX. And I really think that there's some out there that are really good. One of them is the first Darksiders game, which has a lot of cool puzzles in there and is really cool. Leveling up system with souls. I think that's an underrated game. But so is Grim Dawn. Now, Grim Dawn I have not played for a little while, but I have it on my PC. I wish it would get converted over to consoles. But Grim Dawn to me is a great game. Has a wide variety of weapons, stuff you can pick up. And I really think a lot more people should check that game out. Also, a lot more people should check out The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing. Now, part of the thing is some people would play it on console compared to on PC. Well, I found out recently that with your Xbox Live Games with Gold, you can actually play the third one in the series is coming free on there, but then that means also on there the Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing 2 and Part 1 all on Xbox. I don't know if they're on PlayStation 4 because I don't play PS4, but they're on there. It's really cool. There's really good banter between the ghost companion you have and yourself. There's powers you can do. Everything is really cool, and I really love the Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing series, and it's actually really good. Another one I would say is Vikings, Wolves of Midgard on the Xbox One. That game is really good, and I really like it. And one for the 360 that doesn't get talked about as much as Kingdoms of Amalur, where you can have 2 sets of weapons, and you can actually do a lot in that game. And I really think that if more people checked out some of these games, maybe they would have a better following than what they have, and I really think a lot of you guys should really check them out. So let's talk about this gaming generation, and then I'm going to talk about the 90s. In this gaming generation, one of the things that has become very prevalent is digital. So like this. This is 90s, by the way. That's Super Metroid. But digital is what everybody does. Like, I have almost 100 games digitally on my Xbox, but I also have like a stack of games. Now, the difference is there's so many of these kids that have grown up that were born around the time that Xbox came out. And Xbox was kind of the first one to bring in the digital age, because they brought in the Xbox Live Arcade, and then you had the PlayStation Network, and then you had the Virtual Console, and there's Steam. So there's so much people that they don't even buy physical media anymore. Like, I try and buy physical media when I can, but sometimes some games aren't even physical media. They are legit only digital, which there's not a problem with it. It means digitally you can get updates, but the one thing I've noticed is there's a lot of updates all the time. And the problem is, if a game is digital, over time it can be taken off the store and then it's gone. This game is gone forever. So the other thing that's coming with this generation is you can't play with somebody else on your couch anymore. It's all about, you can play co-op, but co-op means each person must have an Xbox Live Gold subscription or a PlayStation Network subscription, and you gotta have 2 different consoles, and you can't play. And I've noticed this a lot with my fiance when we're trying to play games. She can't play the game with me because she's sitting here with me. So it contradicts what it's now referred to as is co-op play and couch play. Couch play is something we did in the 90s and in the 2000s and in the 80s. And even the 70s too. But nowadays you can't do that. It's something different. The other thing that's also come up in this generation of gaming especially is microtransactions, which is why I refuse to buy Battlefront 2, because the microtransaction bullshit. It's why I don't own Shadow of War, the Mordor game, because of microtransaction shit. I don't agree with it. I think it's fucking stupid. It's like a pay-to-win crap. So I really don't agree with that. So you look at all these things that are here, and I may just sound like an old guy, but compared to the 90s, the 90s had the most interesting time for gaming, because people would actually experiment with different types of video games. That's when you got the Splatterhouses, the Zombies Ate My Neighbors, you had like A Boy and His Blob, you had Disney games, you had Star Fox, you had Mortal Kombat, you had Street Fighter, you had Clay Fighters, you had things like Earthworm Jim, you had Wolfenstein, you had Doom. You had all these things that we don't have now. You had games that took a chance, and you had cartridges, and you had multiple consoles. In the 90s, in the beginning of the 90s, you had the Sega Master System, the Sega Genesis, the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, you had the 3DO, you had the CDI, you had the Sega CD, the Sega 32X, you had the PC Engine / TurboGrafx, you had the Nintendo Game Boy, you had the Atari Jaguar, the Atari Lynx, and you also had the Sega Nomad. And you get to the middle of the 90s, and you have the Sony PlayStation, you have the Sega Saturn, you have the Game Boy still going, and then it turned into Game Boy Color, and then you have the Nintendo 64 came out. I believe the Dreamcast came out at the end of the 90s. So you had all these systems, and literally, if you count from if you count in the last, from 2006 to now, because that's the new generation, you have the PS3, the 360, the Wii, you have the Wii U, you have the Nintendo Switch, PS4, Xbox One. That's not a lot. And you have the 3DS, and you had the PS Vita / PSP, but that's like a lot less. It seemed like there was more consoles back then. There was more companies trying to speed forward, and now you have certain companies that buy up other companies, swallow them whole. Franchises die. Game companies that were prevalent in the 90s not making the same quality that they used to make, and it's just weird. So we're going to talk about Christmas gifts in the past. Now, I'm going to stick to literally the gaming gifts. So, one year I got a Nintendo Game Boy, which was awesome, and the games I actually got with it, I got Mega Man 2, Kirby's Dream Land, and Battletoads. Battletoads was hard back then, it's hard now. Mega Man 2, hard then, hard now. But out of all the games that I got for the Game Boy that year, it was Kirby's Dream Land that I played the most of. I fucking love the Kirby series. And Kirby's Dream Land is like my all-time favorite Kirby game. And another year I got my Nintendo, which had the LGN games I talked about, but I also got Godzilla. But the funny thing with that is I actually opened it the day before, and then I rewrapped all the presents. And I think my parents knew secretly. I think they did. But still, I adored it and I loved it. And then in '99, I got a PlayStation 1. Now, to play PlayStation, I used to have to go to this person's house and this person's house and this person's house to be able to play it. But I finally had a PlayStation, and I had SmackDown 2 Know Your Role, which I recently reacquired, and that game is fucking awesome. I love that game. I had Evil Dead Hail to the King I got that year. Final Fantasy 7. See, I just started absorbing, because back then you could rent video games for like $1. And also they had FuncoLand at the time, which was going out of business, and they had KB Toys, was dying. So you could get games on the dirt cheap, and they just opened, I believe it's the first ever gaming store I saw. It was, at the time I was living in Linwood, and this game store was literally like small, like a boutique, but it had video games in there, and I thought that was fucking awesome and great to have a video game store in there, and I thought it was really cool. But I got my PlayStation that year, and I believe it was when I was 19, and for Christmas I got a PS2. So this would have been, I was about 19, so this would be 2003, 2004, I had a PS2, and that really rekindled my love for RPGs, because for a while there I wasn't playing RPGs, because there wasn't a lot of RPGs for me to play, but PS2 just had so fucking many. Fucking loved it. And last year for Christmas, my fiance got me a blank cartridge, no label on it, and she told me, I'm not going to tell you what this is, you have to go put it in the machine. And it's a game I played when I was 7 years old, and I hadn't played it since I was 7 years old, and it was A Link to the Past, and I adore it now as much as I adored it back then, and I really loved it. So I wanted to end the episode on a happy note like that. So this has been the Game Zone episode 1, and I think I'm going to go with a Saturday tradition. Every Saturday there'll be a brand new episode of the Game Zone, and this is 2 days before Christmas, so I hope everybody that's listening has a Merry Christmas, and I will catch all you guys later.